The US government wasn't built on wishful thinking. Nope, it was built on a blueprint, a really carefully crafted design meant to protect liberty, not just for a little while, but for generations. So today, we're going to break down that very architecture. This is the big question, right? This was the puzzle the founders were absolutely obsessed with. How do you build a government that's strong enough to get things done, but not so strong that it ends up crushing the very people it's supposed to serve? And their answer tells you everything about how they saw human nature. They didn't bet on finding perfect, saintly leaders. Instead, they designed a system that could actually withstand our flaws. A system built on the idea that, hey, people aren't perfect, but we can still build something that lasts. Okay, so to really appreciate the genius of their design, we first have to get our heads around the problem they were trying to solve, which is the fundamental, timeless challenge of power itself. For them, this wasn't just some abstract theory. It was the bloody, hard-earned lesson of history. They'd seen it over and over again, from ancient Rome to their own fight with King George, that giving one person or one group all the control is just a recipe for disaster. They knew that good intentions are never, ever enough to keep freedom safe. And this change in perspective is a total game changer. They stopped asking who should be in charge and started asking how should we build the thing. It's a question of engineering, of political architecture. It's designed from the ground up to handle the fact that, humans are going to be humans. And this is their brilliant solution. The separation of powers. It is the absolute core principle of the entire structure. The idea is simple. You slice up the power of government into different pieces, and you hand those pieces to different groups. That way, no one can ever hold all the cards. So what does this foundational blueprint actually look like? Well, it's a really simple but powerful three-part design. First up, you have the legislative branch. That's Congress, which you'll find in Article 1 of the Constitution. Their job? They make the laws. Then you've got the executive branch, the president, in Article 2. Their job is to enforce those laws. And finally, the judicial branch, the courts, in Article 3. They interpret the laws and make sure they square with the Constitution. Simple, separate jobs, all laid out nice and clear. Now, this is the really crucial point. None of these branches can act alone. Think about it. The power to make a law is pretty useless if you don't have the power to enforce it. And the power to enforce is kind of meaningless without courts to interpret what it all means. They're intentionally designed to need each other. But just separating them isn't quite enough. How do you keep the branches from trying to grab power from each other? Well, the founders added an active ingredient, a kind of dynamic tension, to make the whole system hum. They basically armed each branch with tools to defend its own turf and to push back against the others. A good way to think of it is like this. Separation creates the walls between the rooms, but checks and balances are the doors and the locks that control the flow of power between them. And you see this constant tug of war playing out every single day. Congress passes a law, but wait, the president can veto it. The president appoints a judge, but hold on, the Senate has to approve them. The courts can just strike down a law from Congress as unconstitutional. But maybe the biggest check of them all? Congress holds the purse strings. Nothing happens in government without the money. It is a constant game of push and pull. This is the incredible theory behind it all, and it's captured perfectly by James Madison. The system doesn't depend on people being selfless angels. It actually harnesses their natural ambition, their desire for power, and it uses that very energy to police the entire system. It's not cynical, it's just a deeply wise and realistic way of looking at the world. Okay, so this whole thing might seem like a really complex machine, but it's not just a museum piece that we're supposed to admire from a distance. It's a living, breathing system, and it has a critical role for one more group of people: us. Look, it's so easy to get frustrated with our government. We complain about gridlock, about how inefficient it is. But here's the thing. The system was never designed to be fast. It was designed to be safe. Its promise isn't that you'll always get the outcome you want, but that there will be a lawful and transparent process. That frustration we sometimes feel, that gridlock, a lot of times that's actually a sign the system is working. It means power is being debated and checked, not just used without any restraint. And that kind of deliberation, well, it takes time. But let's be really clear about this. This incredible architecture does not run on autopilot. It needs maintenance, it needs us. When we as citizens become uninformed or we just check out, a power vacuum gets created, and that delicate balance of the whole system is threatened. Self-government, it turns out, requires our attention.
So what can you do? Here's a simple plan. Sometime this week, just read the first 3 articles of the Constitution. They're way shorter than you think. And as you read, just jot down one power and one limit for each branch. Then, watch the news and try to spot the system in action. And finally, share what you've learned with somebody. This stuff matters.
Because ultimately, freedom is not an accident. It's a choice and it's a structure. And to preserve it, we can't just admire the timeless architecture that holds it all together. We have to actively maintain it. The future of this whole experiment really depends on it.